met about 18 years ago. We kind of, sort of fell in love. And a decade later, we ran into each other.
No. You wrote a book, and I read about it and went to look for it.
Oh, that's pretty romantic.
If we were meeting for the first time today on a train, would you start talking to me? Would you ask me to get off the train with you?
Of course.
Well, this place is so full of thousands of years of myth and tragedy, and I thought something tragic was going to happen.
Still there? Still there? Gone.
For Midnight. I tell you, even my longest relationships haven't been as long as these movies have been.
Oh, damn.
I thought the first one was a cute, clever idea about two people meeting on a train and talking all night and kind of forming this bond.
I liked it. It was a smart film.
Yeah.
Richard Linklater stepping in and doing when often he's at his best.
Right.
Where it's like just very intimate dialogue between people that's very revealing. I mean, he builds characters like nobody else.
Yeah, funny thing is, I've never seen the first one or the second one. It was but before sunrise or sunset or
after sunset.
After sunset, yeah.
In the middle of the day.
In afternoon sunset.
Before Sunrise came out in 1995, which was the first one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the sequel came out in 2004, Before Sunset. And this one, Beyond Midnight. Before Midnight, came out now.
Right.
And this all...
Well, I know it was a writer on the first one. And then it was Kim Kazan wrote the first one, and then with the second one, when she was supposed to write it, the actors, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, just well, I don't know. I think we know these characters. We could just kind of ad-lib this one ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And they do really obviously know these characters. I mean, they have. By the time
they're we are these people.
They've you wonder kind of. You're like, are these two involved for real?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, this. I never saw the second one either. It was one of those I always meant to, never got around to it because I really, really did enjoy the first one. But the second one had huge critical acclaim. It was widely praised.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah. Now this third one is, it's Before Midnight. That's got to tell you something right there, which means that maybe this isn't going to be quite as slappy happy as the first two were, which apparently, at least the first one was all just this sort of meeting someone, being invigorated by them, just that instant love that can happen, especially when you're young,
Especially when you're traveling, when you're traveling out, in a foreign land, and you just happen to run into somebody, kind of like a Lost in Translation type deal. You run into somebody for that one moment, and you really click. But, at some point, it's all, you're going to have to, both have your separate ways, leave, and, just, I guess, think about, wow, what could have happened.
And the second one is so many years later, and this is just going partially from what I read online and partially from what I saw in this third one. Ethan Hawke was involved with another woman at that point. I think he was married to her, I think, at that point. And they had a kid, and it was and then he runs into Julie Delpy again. He's become a successful author, writing about his first experience with her on the train, turned into a huge hit, and they rebonded again. And in fact, he ends up, I don't know if that happens in that movie or not, but we find out by the third one, he left his wife and moved to Paris to be with Julie Delpy.
And go back in time to the 20s and hang out with Hemingway.
No.
Am I mixing my movies here?
That would be awesome, but no. And here we are. They've been doing it for a while. They've been 10 years or something. They've been living together. The film starts with him saying goodbye to his kid from this other wife, putting him back on the plane. Hey, we had a great summer together, right? And it's clear Ethan Hawke is really broken up about this.
Yeah.
He is not pleased. And from the moment that he gets back in the car with Julie Delpy, who's been waiting for him outside the airport, it's clear that time has developed wounds with these two as a couple together. They obviously still like each other a lot, and they have fun with each other, and they understand each other really well. But there's this whole undercurrent that keeps going on around his affection for his kid from this other marriage, and the fact that he wants to be with this kid.
Yeah, he wants to move back. He wants to move back to the States.
Well, he never even, he never in this entire movie ever says, let's move back to the States. But there's so much fear in Julie Delpy that that's what he wants her to do, that the entire film wraps itself around this neurosis that she builds, that's what, that's all he wants, that's more important to him than her.
So if you're going to spend another 56 more years together,
Yeah.
what about me would you like to change?
That's another one of your can't win questions. I'm not answering that.
What do you mean? There's not one thing you'd like to change about me? I'm perfect?
Okay.
Okay.
Actually,
one thing.
if I could change one thing about you, it would be for you to stop trying to change me.
You're a very skilled manipulator.
Well, I'm
You know that?
on to you. I know how you work.
You think?
Yeah, I know everything about you. Here we go. Let's go through here.
I don't think you do, actually.
No?
Talk about one of those situations when you're in a relationship and you just say, you're just being honest, like they ask you to be.
Yeah.
And you go, well, sometimes I wish it could be this way. And 3 hours later, it's a screaming match because clearly that's all you ever really wanted and you can't stand them. And that's more, you know what I mean? That's this movie.
when you gotta go-
Are you having woman troubles?
I'm not, actually. I'm quite happy. But we've been there. We've all been there. If you've been in a relationship, you've
No,
been
because
there.
my woman knows better.
Yeah, that's right. I was like, look, you ain't changing shit, woman. All right? Now go make me a chicken pot pie.
But as this movie goes on, the first 2/3 of this film are really like, the first third of this film is almost entirely in a car, really, as they're just driving with their 2 daughters they have together across the countryside and just talking. Like one shot even. And it's a cool conversation.
It is. It really is. It's a conversation. It's one of the other thing about this movie is that it is kind of like, a retrospective on just being their age, which is around 40 something.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is a better examination of being 40 than
This is 40.
this is 40. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a more realistic one.
It's way more realistic, and that's kind of what I appreciate, especially with the dialogue. Especially considering that, it does make sense that these characters, especially, that they've been around, making these movies together, that they should have a sense of like that chemistry where, and they've been in relationships long enough, and just being 40, that they could write this on their own and I thought that's kind of what was cool about it. That's why I think it had that more realistic feel to it, because it felt like a lot of these things that they were taking for these characters, they were probably taking from their own personal lives, especially Ethan Hawke.
And they did write this themselves. This was written, credited to Richard Linklater, Julie Delpy, and Ethan Hawke as the sole writers of it. Now the middle act here all takes place, and they're on vacation in Greece with their family, and they've been invited there by another writer of some famous writer, I guess, in the context of the thing. Maybe he's a real writer, I don't even know. But this guy who's like, oh, we've put you up all summer, and it's this big dinner party, and that was my favorite part of this movie.
That was a great scene.
Incredible. That's the whole middle of the film is this dinner party.
Yeah.
And it's just this incredible conversation between all these people. Made you think of something like My Dinner with Andre.
Oh, okay.
Where it's like, wow, this whole like multi-part thing with all these different characters that are all talking about life and love and romance, but doing it in such an intelligent, insightful way.
It's the type of conversation you could only wish you could have with your real friends if you wanted to actually pretend to be actual adults. Not like us where we're screaming about Iron Man and fucking Batman, which is the better movie.
We're like, when you're in a relationship with a girl and it's like that scene in Dark Knight.
Where's my Rachel? But the thing is that that scene just worked. Because they were dealing with, they were just talking, about their past relationships and how they met, and they were all interesting stories. But the other things that that usually comes with those types of stories, I thought they laid it out pretty flat. Where I'm like, okay, this is it's at least entertaining. As far as me being an outsider looking in, I was like, okay, this scene could really fall flat if these people just are like ad-libbing, just making up shit during this conversation. Which honestly, I think that's probably what happened here. They're like, okay, here's some scripted stuff. Here's some key points about this conversation that you need to have, but kind of go with your own thing. Develop this history about yourself and the person you're in love with.
It's very naturalistic.
Yeah.
Which is why it feels like maybe there was a lot of that going. I don't know if there was or not, but it certainly feels that way.
Yeah. And it was interesting that I never got bored during this.
No, not at all. They're saying lots of stuff that even I never thought about before in the context of relationships and your whole life, and talking about there's a whole interesting part about like going to the end of life with someone you love, that point when one of them dies, and what does that mean to you? And it's wow. I found that having just had one of my parents die was like very like powerful stuff to me.
Oh yeah.
But then it gets to the third part of the film, and I don't want to be a jerk here and because of my own like reaction, like feeling a film I was really enjoying, and a film turns on you and goes, you're not supposed to enjoy this part. This is not for you to enjoy. This is for to be realistic. And it's realistic. Where the two of them end up in a hotel room together that they were given as a present by some friends. Like, hey, here's your last night in Greece. We bought you a nice hotel room. And they get into the worst fucking fight for like 40 minutes. I mean,
40 minutes?
It just goes on and on and on. And it's like two very realistic people who have their own serious, weird different ways of looking at life. Like, she's being very unrealistic. I thought. I mean, I was like, she's
to a point. I get it.
He keeps saying you're being really irrational, and she is completely irrational.
Yeah, but
he's also being kind of a dick about it too.
That's the thing. He's being a dick about it, especially when they bring up a certain issue about what happened on this certain day where he was out doing his book signing, having the time of his life, while she was at home, wondering, what is he up to? And I mean, I think we've all had a little bit of experience with that. Like, well, what were you doing? And, there's a point where, you can be the dick and go, look, don't worry about what I was doing, all right? I'm making money here. There's a reason why we're here,
and they both pulled the whole, like, oh, yeah? Well, what about you when this happened? Like, multiple times through this. And you just want to go, come on, you're in your 40s. You're not children anymore. Cut that shit out.
No, you want to go, Mom and Dad, stop it. Stop it. Stop fighting.
But that's the thing is, when they're together, they're really fun to watch. But when they're fighting, it's just like, I mean, I've had fights in the past in previous relationships that were a lot like this, where you're desperately trying to keep control over the situation. You're trying to keep it from becoming an emotional volcano. And yet everything you do to... be calm. It's like...
Makes it worse.
It just makes it worse.
Pull your Spock and try to think logically. Let's think logically. And your girl goes, fuck you, and your logic.
It's like,
you're not giving me answers, motherfucker.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's not realistic, but I could not enjoy it.
See, the thing is, I really enjoyed that part. That's the part where, that's the tension in the movie. I mean, because you're right. It does strike a chord where it's like, wow, this is real. I've definitely, I feel like I've been in this conversation before. I've seen other friends bitch about this conversation before.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really makes it work, because I'm like, because at certain points during the argument, sure, you see Ethan Hawke's point of view because you can't help but relate because you're a guy, but then you kind of flip the script a bit and you're like wondering, okay, if the shoe was on the other foot, would I see Julie? What's her name? Delpy's. Can I see her point of view? And I'm like, in a certain way, yeah, I can. And it was like a tennis match between them that I kept rooting for one person, and then after a while, I was like rooting for somebody else. I'm like, what? You gonna take that shit? you gonna let him talk to you about? You gonna let him talk to you like that? You gonna let him get away with it?
I don't know about seeing her point of view, but you should certainly see her boobs. Jesus Christ!
Oh, there ain't nothing wrong with that.
20 minutes of this film, she's topless during this scene, and I'm not even saying this in a lascivious way. It's awkward, quite frankly, because when they first met in the hotel room, they're making out and they start getting close to doing it, and they're having a conversation while he is in extreme close-up sucking on her nipples, alternately continuing the conversation. Wow. I'm at that point, I hate to say it, but this is kind of TMI considering the kind of film this is. I'm like, I don't really want to see this. And then they start fighting, and her shirt is just off, and they keep fighting, and she's bouncing around the room.
You never been in that kind of argument?
Oh, no, I have.
Have you ever been in an argument when you're both butt-ass naked, arguing in the bed, going, look,
I have.
You say you're going to do this to me, and now you can't go back. I gave you $20 for that.
And once again, that made it that much more realistic, which is that much more why it had me off, totally discombobulated.
I think this movie just scared you. I think it was too real for you. There was not enough fantasy.
It was just that point where I was like, I come to the movies to some degree for escapism, and you're
what?
No, Cyrus, come on,
don't pull that fucking card.
Come on, man. You want the movies to be as realistic. You watch all those horror movies and torture porn. You watch it now. You gotta watch the torture porn.
Iron Man 3. This is about as real as you can get.
I don't know, man. I think this is a very well done film that ultimately didn't appeal to me that much. I see these characters and the mistakes that they're making, and I don't feel like they ever learn from their mistakes. It comes to a resolution that's kind of like, well, this is all we had.
But you know what?
A détente.
Yeah.
It's that resolution that I was like, well, once again, it's realistic. It
Yeah.
really is. It's too realistic, but that's why I liked it. It's like, it was daring that it did that.
And maybe my problem is that I wasn't as attached to these characters as people were who watched all three, and you haven't even watched the first.
No. But you know what? It is kind of like that Star Trek thing where you realize, okay, well, there's Kirk and there's Spock, and they have this long history. I get that because that history has been shoved in my face by my friends for so goddamn long. So yeah, I understand that. And with this, I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, it is one of those things where, you know, when you're watching this movie, they do give you some history about their relationship. I mean, what I liked about this movie the most is that you don't have to go see the first two movies to understand what these people are about. They give you a lot of backstory about
at least I
their
think.
relationship.
I mean,
Yeah.
there were a couple moments that you're like, I think they're referring to something that happened before, but I'm not really sure.
See, I couldn't help but think that, and I think that's kind of what helped me out because knowing it was the third part of a movie dealing with their relationship, it dealt with them, and it for some reason, at least it just sunk in with me. Where there was never a point where I was like scratching my head, going, "Okay, what are they referring to that I just don't get?" You know, it didn't prove a distraction at all with the story that they were telling. You know,
Well, I think we can both agree that, once again, we keep saying it was super realistic. And whether or not you want to be thrust into that world is a whole other thing. The first two parts of it, I really did. I wanted to talk with these people. I wanted to be in their world. I wanted to hang out with them. And
you wanted to hang out with some smart people for once? Is it drinking some fine wine?
I didn't want to say it.
It's all right. I understand.
See if Film Comment Magazine's having a new podcast I'm going to be on. Just kidding. But that third act, like I said, it was one of those things I'm going, oh, this is too realistic for me to the point, and then doesn't have a resolution either. And I went, well, realistic it may be, incredibly well acted it might be, but it's not totally for me. And I give this a matinee.
Yeah, I'm giving
2/3 of the way there.
I'm giving it full price. I mean,
Like it that much.
I was completely engaged, and it's one of those. I don't know. It is like looking into a people aquarium, where the things that they were bringing up, it was a lot of things that I've thought about at some point, and I'm nowhere near close to their age. I'm 5 years. I'm like 6 years old, right? That's how long.
Mentally,
yeah, 6 years old, yeah, and watching it, especially like you said about the whole being in a relationship. And just thinking about when you're old, and if you're still in that relationship, what are the things about you dealing with the other person not being there? Passing away. What would that feel like? I thought, wow, I'm glad somebody brought this up in a movie because I've thought about it. And the fact that they did bring up interesting conversations like that, I was just really into, and it was kind of a bummer when it ended. It's kind of like really good Woody Allen movies for me. When they end, you're like, oh man, I was really enjoying that world,
Yeah.
and now I got to go back to my crummy world and argue about Batman being better than everything.
It's funny. The first one was so much about the blush of new romance, and this one is about that point when you have to bring realism into a relationship after it's been going on for a while, where you go. And it regularly, especially in the second part, regularly deals with that whole sort of deconstruction of love. It's look, love is not really that whole constant fireworks, I need to be by you all the time thing.
Yeah.
That's just not realistic. That's Hollywood. It's real love is that point where you go, I'm going to be okay. You do what you need to do.
She's all right.
I'm really glad you're here, but you need to be over there for a while. I'm going to be over here listening to Spill.com. Don't bother me.
Do you hear that, Cyrus's girlfriend?
This is how people start breaking up.
Oh my God. I assure you, that guy you vaguely remember, the sweet romantic one that you met on a train, that is me.
Why am I finding myself so
Let me just see
attracted to
Ian.
this woman?